Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Bryce. I am 32 years old. And until last year, I honestly believed I was building a life with the woman I loved. Marielle and I had been together for 5 years and living together for 3. We were not flashy people, at least not in the beginning. We had routines. We had favorite takeout places. We had a standing Friday night habit of picking a movie, turning off our phones, and pretending the rest of the world could wait. I handled most of the planning. I paid for more than I should have. She always said she appreciated how steady I was, and I took that as love. Looking back, I think I confused being useful with being valued. When I say things were decent before everything collapsed, I do not mean perfect. We had normal stress. I worked long shifts and sometimes came home tired enough to eat in silence. She complained about her job in retail management and said she felt stuck. We talked about getting a house one day. We even had a separate savings account for that goal, and we were supposed to be contributing equally. But our life still felt like a shared life. When my car needed repairs, she sat with me while I called around for estimates. When her aunt got sick, I drove her 2 hours to see family and took the next day off work so she would not make that trip alone. I thought that was what commitment looked like, small sacrifices that added up to a future. The shift started about 8 months before I left. Marielle joined a new yoga studio after one of her coworkers recommended it. At first I was glad. She seemed lighter. She talked about feeling healthier, more social, more confident. Then she made friends there, especially 2 women named Patrice and Nicole, and the whole tone of our relationship started changing. Suddenly, every conversation was about energy, freedom, not settling, not getting trapped in routines, and making the most of her youth. She did not say those things to hurt me at first. She said them like she was discovering a new language for herself. Still, I noticed that every new version of freedom she described seemed to require less consideration for me. The first trip was in March, a weekend in Las Vegas with a yoga group. I remember helping her zip up a small white suitcase by the front door while she stood there, checking her phone and smiling at messages. She kissed me before she left and promised they would mostly stay at the hotel spa and maybe go out one night. I told her to have fun. I meant it. I did not want to be the kind of boyfriend who made a woman feel watched. She came back Sunday evening tanned, tired, and affectionate. She crawled into my lap on the couch, said she missed me, and asked me to order food. It felt normal enough that I pushed away the brief thought that she had seemed a little too practiced in how she reassured me. April brought another trip, this time to Napa Valley for a wine weekend. She presented it less like a request and more like a fact. Patrice had found a package deal. Nicole had already paid her share. Everyone had jobs and stress and deserved a break. I remember standing in the kitchen while she explained all of this, watching her excitement, and deciding not to make an issue out of it. Relationships need room, I told myself. Healthy people do not panic over a girlfriend taking a trip with her friends. She posted smiling pictures from vineyards and restaurant patios, and everyone in the comments kept calling them beautiful, thriving, radiant. I double-tapped a few photos like I was supposed to, and ignored the strange feeling that I was becoming an audience member in my own relationship. By May, the pattern had started to bother me. That trip was Miami. By then, the new friend group did not feel like a hobby anymore. It felt like a separate life she was protecting from me. I tried to bring it up carefully before she left. I asked whether everything between us was all right, because these trips were starting to happen a lot. She gave me a look that made me feel as if I had already failed some test. Then she softened her voice and sat beside me on the bed. She said she loved me. She said she had spent most of her 20s being responsible, and she did not want to look back later and resent everything she had not done. She told me I was not like controlling men who needed to monitor every move a woman made. She smiled when she said that, as if she were praising me, but it felt more like a warning. I said I understood because I still wanted to be the man she thought she could trust. The first real crack opened while she was in Miami. We kept separate checking accounts, but that arrangement had always been more technical than real. I covered most dinners, most household extras, a lot of the online orders, and half the things that somehow became fully my responsibility without discussion. Marielle had asked to use my credit card for the hotel in case there was any issue at check-in. She promised she would only use it for that. I believed her, because until that point I had not fully accepted that trust can survive long after respect has already left the room. When the statement came through, I saw the hotel charge, which I expected. I also saw nearly $800 in bottle service, expensive restaurant tabs, and a $300 charge from a men's clothing store. I stared at that statement for a long time. There are moments in a relationship when the evidence is clear, but your mind still tries to save you from what it means. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the restaurant charge got split badly. Maybe one of the women used the wrong car by mistake. Maybe the clothing store was a birthday gift for a relative. Denial is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is just the quiet refusal to destroy your own peace before you absolutely have to. When she came home, I asked her about it calmly. She laughed, not nervously, not apologetically, just lightly, as if I had brought up something silly. She said the women wanted one big night out, and that she would pay me back. She said the store purchase had been a gift she tried to buy for me, but they did not have my size, so she returned it. I never saw a return. I never saw the money either. I should have pushed harder then. I know that now. But the truth is I had spent years learning how to make excuses for her. If she forgot something important, I told myself she was overwhelmed. If she borrowed money and did not replace it, I told myself couples were supposed to help each other. If she dismissed something that hurt me, I told myself I might be overreacting. I had trained myself to turn confusion into patience, because patience felt nobler than admitting I might be getting used. June was when something in me finally started changing. She announced another trip, this one to Austin, and she did not even pretend to ask whether it made sense. She said it over dinner while scrolling through her phone. I put my fork down and told her this was 4 trips in 4 months. I reminded her that we had not gone anywhere together in over a year. I reminded her she still owed me from Miami. She leaned back in her chair and looked at me with this mix of disbelief and amusement, like I had become tedious. Then she gave me a small smirk and said I always forgave her. She said I was soft, and that was one of the things she loved about me. She said I was not toxic like other men. It was meant to sound flattering. It landed like contempt. I still remember the exact sensation of that moment. It was not rage. It was not heartbreak in the dramatic sense. It was more like a light switching on in a room I had been living in for years. I suddenly saw our relationship from above. I saw how often I had paid, how often I had adjusted, how often I had accepted less while feeling proud of myself for being understanding. I told her, very quietly, that it was good to know. She barely heard me. She was already packing, folding expensive workout sets into a suitcase with the confidence of someone who believed her safety net would always be waiting at home. That night, after she left for Austin, I opened every account I had. My savings, my credit cards, the shared house fund, my monthly expenses, my income, all of it. I had around $11,000 in personal savings. I had about $6,000 in credit card debt. Most of it accumulated gradually through things that looked harmless one at a time. Furniture upgrades she pushed for, dinners I picked up, clothes, emergency purchases, weekends away we never took but still seemed to pay for in smaller ways. Our apartment was month to month at that point because the original lease had ended and we had not renewed. The landlord knew me as the primary tenant. Marielle's credit history was bad enough that we had agreed not to put everything in both names when we first moved in. At the time, it felt like helping. That night, for the first time, I saw it as exposure. I started looking at condos. I did not do it out of fantasy. I did it out of survival. I found a small foreclosure in a decent part of Nashville. Nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with good bones and monthly payments I could manage if I tightened everything. The lender I spoke with told me the down payment and closing costs would be tight, but possible if I stayed disciplined and showed stable income. I started picking up extra shifts immediately. While Marielle posted poolside photos from Austin with captions about freedom and healing, I was gathering pay stubs, submitting paperwork, and picturing a locked front door that belonged only to me. July brought trip number 5, a long weekend in San Diego for Nicole's birthday. By then, Marielle had stopped trying to sell these trips as occasional. They were simply part of her life, and my role was to support them financially or emotionally without asking too many questions. The week before she left, she mentioned San Diego while doing her makeup in the mirror. I told her to have fun. She glanced at me like she expected more resistance and seemed almost disappointed not to get it. What she did not know was that my offer on the condo had just been accepted that morning. Something had shifted inside me after Austin. I was not numb, Exactly. I was detaching on purpose. Every time she pulled farther away, I stopped chasing and redirected the energy into an exit. Her behavior got bolder after that. The Austin trip had been Friday through Sunday, but she got back late Monday afternoon with a story about a changed flight and a dead phone battery. The San Diego weekend turned into 5 days because there had supposedly been a problem with hotel reservations, and then someone wanted to extend the trip. She asked why I was being distant when she got back from that one. I told her I was focused on work, which was true, but incomplete. I was also focused on the quiet humiliation of realizing the woman I loved had become most affectionate when she wanted access to my peace, my money, or my silence. Around this time, another truth became harder to ignore. We had stopped feeling like a couple long before we officially ended. She was always too tired, too busy, too distracted, too stressed for real closeness. Our physical relationship had become infrequent and strangely impersonal, like something she remembered to offer only when she sensed I was slipping away. I did not mention that to friends because it felt private and embarrassing, but it mattered. The relationship was not only being neglected, it was being hollowed out while I stood there pretending the shell was still enough. I closed on the condo on August 1st. It was one of the best days of my life, not because it was glamorous, but because it felt clean. The place was small, quiet, and completely mine. For the next 2 weeks, I moved carefully. Important documents first. Work clothes, family photos, my late father's watch, the kitchen equipment I had bought, the desk I used for bills, some electronics, then more boxes, always while she was at work or out with friends. I did not rush because rushing creates mistakes. What struck me most was how little she noticed. She came and went in a blur of plans, messages, and outfit changes, and all the while the life she assumed would still be there was being dismantled piece by piece. Trip number 6 was Scottsdale. Patrice had found some promoter who could supposedly get them into exclusive sections at clubs. Marielle told me this with that same faintly amused expression she wore whenever she expected me to absorb something unreasonable without complaint. Then she said she needed new outfits and asked to borrow my card again until payday. Her tone was sweet, casual, practiced. I handed her a card I had already called the bank to limit to $100. I did not do it to strand her. I did it because I was done financing disrespect. She had a job, friends, and options. What she no longer had was unlimited access to me. She left early Friday morning, kissed me goodbye, and told me not to miss her too much. I watched her pull away and then finished moving out. I hired movers for the larger pieces that were clearly mine, things I had purchased outright myself before or during our relationship. I left items that were clearly hers. For the bedroom set and a couple of shared pieces, I left the main items and took only what I could document as having fully paid for and reasonably separate from her use. I transferred my exact half of the house savings into my account using our contribution records. I called the utility companies and ended the services in my name effective Monday. I also notified the landlord in writing that I was vacating at the end of the period and provided Marielle's contact information because she was still occupying the apartment. Everything I did was documented, because by then I knew I was dealing with someone who turned consequences into accusations. I used the money from my savings and my half of the house fund to wipe out my credit. Card debt. That part mattered more emotionally than I expected. Paying off that debt felt like removing fingerprints from my life. By Saturday evening, my phone started lighting up. I knew what it meant before I even picked it up. The limited card had been declined. There were texts asking what was wrong with it, then texts saying this was not funny, then a payment request for $500 marked as urgent. I declined it and set my phone down. Sunday morning brought more messages. She said she had to borrow money from Patrice's friend and that she was humiliated. I did not reply. Monday afternoon, the messages changed shape. She had gotten home. She texted asking where everything was. Then she asked where I was. Then she wrote that the landlord said I had moved out. By the time the voicemail started, her voice had changed from anger to panic. She said this was insane. She said I could not just leave. She asked where the furniture had gone. She threatened to call the police and accuse me of theft. I let the messages sit for a while before I answered once, clearly and briefly. I told her I had moved out, that my belongings were in my new place, that her belongings were still there, and that the landlord now had her information regarding the apartment. Then I wished her luck and blocked her number. For 2 days, it was quiet. Then her mother called. Her name was Desiree, and until then I had liked her. She was hardworking, polite, and had always treated me kindly at family gatherings. But on that call, she sounded less like a concerned parent and more like someone trying to restore a broken arrangement that had benefited her daughter. She said Marielle was devastated and claimed I had abandoned her. I told Desiree the truth. I said we broke up, I moved out legally, and Marielle still had access to the apartment until she figured out her next step. Desiree said Marielle could not afford it alone. She said I knew that. I asked why that was my responsibility after 6 months of trips, lies, and unpaid charges. There was a long silence. Then she shifted into sympathy for Marielle's youth, her need for freedom, the mistakes young women make. That was when I understood something important. Marielle had not invented her entitlement alone. She had inherited parts of it. After her mother came to friends, Patrice sent me messages on social media because I had forgotten to block her there. She called me insecure, controlling, and pathetic. Nicole wrote a long message about how I had trapped Marielle financially and stolen property that did not belong to me. Reading it, I had to stop myself from laughing. These were the same women who had no problem enjoying luxury trips with someone they knew did not fund her own lifestyle. They had watched her use me in real time and apparently decided that as long as the vacations continued, morality could take the weekend off. About a week later, Marielle called from a new number. I almost ignored it, but some instinct told me I needed to hear where her mind was. Her voice came through soft, almost tender. If I had not spent years with her, I might have mistaken it for sincerity. She said she was sorry. She said she understood now that her trips had hurt me. She said she had been selfish. Then she reminded me we had 5 years together and asked whether I was really willing to throw that away over a few trips. That wording told me everything. She still thought the problem was my sensitivity, not her behavior. I told her I was not ending things over trips. I was ending them over being used, lied to, and disrespected. That was when the real reason for the call surfaced. She said she had spoken with the apartment complex, and they told her if she did not pay or find a roommate soon, the debt would damage her credit. She said her credit was already bad and that this would ruin her. I told her she should have thought about that before treating me like an unpaid safety net. She accused me of planning the whole thing to trap her. I reminded her, word for word, that she had told me I would always forgive her because I was too soft. The silence on the line after that was one of the few honest moments she gave me. Then she said she had not meant it that way. I told her she had meant it exactly that way. Once she realized guilt was not working, she changed tactics. She cried and asked where she was supposed to go. She said her mother's place was too small. She said she had seen pictures of my condo on a mutual friend's page and asked if she could stay there temporarily until she got on her feet. I said no immediately. There was no anger in my voice by then, just certainty. She started bargaining. She said we could start fresh. She said she would stop taking trips, get a second job, help with bills, do whatever it took. I told her she was not experiencing cruelty. She was experiencing consequences. That was when she snapped and called me every insulting name she could think of. Right before I hung up, she said something that settled the whole relationship in one sentence. She said I was supposed to take care of her. That was what boyfriends were for. I told her I had taken care of her for 5 years and asked what exactly she had been providing in return. She said she had given me her best years. I told her that if those were her best years, I felt sorry for whoever met her at her worst. Then I hung up and blocked that number too. The apartment situation unraveled exactly the way I expected. None of the friends who preached freedom and sisterhood wanted to sign a lease with her. Patrice was apparently looking for a place with her boyfriend. Nicole said her studio was too small. Other women from the yoga circle had excuses that all sounded generous until responsibility became real. Marielle ended up leaving the apartment under pressure after she fell behind, and the financial fallout hit her credit. She took to social media for a while, posting vague statements about men who punish women for having fun and systems designed to keep women dependent. I did not respond publicly. Some stories defend themselves if you stay still long enough. Around that time, an old friend of mine, named Jerome, reached out. He worked security and guest services at a hotel downtown and had known Marielle from seeing us together once or twice over the years. He asked whether we were still together because he had been debating whether to say something. He sent me a photo from July. It was Marielle at the hotel bar with a man in a suit, leaning in close, smiling the kind of smile I had not seen directed at me in months. Jerome said he had seen them there more than once on different weekends, and that they always left together. He had kept quiet because he was not fully sure what he was looking at and did not want to blow up my life based on one assumption. When I saw the picture, several loose threads tied themselves together at once. The late returns, the men's clothing store charge, the emotional distance, the missing weekends disguised as girls' trips. I had suspected disrespect. Now I had evidence of betrayal. That revelation did not break me the way I once thought cheating would. By then, I had already mourned the relationship. What gave me was clarity. I stopped replaying old arguments in my head. I stopped wondering whether I had overreacted. I stopped feeling guilty when mutual acquaintances acted uncomfortable around me. Cheating matters, but sometimes what hurts more is realizing how long someone trusted your loyalty while they were spending it elsewhere. A few days later, I ran into Patrice at a grocery store. She saw me and immediately looked annoyed, which almost made the encounter easier. I asked how Marielle was doing. Patrice said she was thriving without me. The lie would have sounded stronger if her own card had not been declined while she was trying to pay. She reached for another one, and that one failed too. She fumbled for cash while the line behind her shifted impatiently. It clicked for me, then, that Marielle was staying with her. I asked whether she was helping with groceries now that she was getting back on her feet. Patrice shot me a look that answered the question before her mouth did. She muttered that the arrangement was supposed to be temporary and grabbed her bags. That told me more than any rant online ever could. People are very loud about what they tolerate in theory. They become much quieter when they're the ones funding it. 3 days after that, Marielle called again from yet another number. This time her voice sounded tired rather than sweet. She said she needed help because she was sick. When I asked what kind of help, she hesitated and then said she might be pregnant. I laughed before I could stop myself. Not because it was funny, but because the manipulation had become so transparent that it crossed into absurdity. I told her I hoped the man from the hotel stepped up. She went completely silent. Then she tried to deny what I was talking about. I told her I already knew about him. I also reminded her that even if she were pregnant, which I doubted, the timing made it impossible for the child to be mine. We had not been together physically in 2 months before I left. There was another silence after that, longer and uglier. She dropped the pregnancy story and shifted again. She said she was not pregnant, but really was sick, that she had a kidney infection and had lost her job after missing too much work. She blamed the stress on me. She said the man from the hotel had blocked her because she got too clingy after I left. Listening to her blame my departure for the collapse of an affair she chose was one of the most distorted conversations of my life. I told her to ask her mother, Patrice, or anyone else in the circle she had prioritized over me. She said she would die without help. That part one took seriously enough to document, but I also knew the pattern by then. Every threat, every tear, every apology was aimed at reopening access to the person she had already decided to devalue. After that call, she sent dozens of texts from different numbers. Some promised revenge. Some declared love. Some accused me of ruining her life. A few accused me of not being a real man because I had not fought for her harder. I blocked everything, changed my number, and tightened my privacy settings. I also started saving screenshots and statements in a folder because her instability had moved beyond drama into risk. That instinct ended up maturing more than I knew. For about a month, the chaos moved farther away from me, though I still heard pieces through mutual acquaintances. Marielle and Patrice had started clashing because Marielle was not contributing to groceries or rent and kept coming and going at odd hours. She also brought men back to the apartment more than once, which apparently ended the friendship faster than any moral objection ever had. The final break came when she asked to borrow Patrice's credit card for yet another trip, because she said she needed to clear her head. Even homeless and unemployed, she was still reaching for escape before responsibility. That told me the behavior had never been about one bad season. It was a worldview. Around then, I learned more about the man from the hotel. He was married. Marielle had apparently convinced herself she was not just sleeping with him, but progressing towards something more serious. When she found out she was one of several women, she went looking for answers at his workplace and caused a scene. I only know that because Jerome heard about it through hotel staff who knew the man by sight, and because the details spread fast through the kind of social circles that feed on spectacle. I did not need every part of the story confirmed. The broad shape was enough. She had gambled our relationship on a fantasy, and even in that fantasy, she had not been special. Eventually, she ended up back at her mother's house, in the same small room she once swore she would never return to. That was when Desiree called me again, this time at work. One of my coworkers, Alana, knew her from church and had innocently passed along the number, not realizing there was history behind it. Desiree sounded exhausted, not defensive, not persuasive, just tired in a way that made her sound older than I remembered. She asked me, very quietly, whether Marielle's trips had really all been with her friends. I told her no, at least not all of them. Desiree exhaled, like she had already known. She said Marielle had been lying to her too, disappearing for days, using her credit card, coming back with unexplained purchases, accusing everyone else whenever questioned. Then she asked me how I had finally walked away. I told her the truth. I said I reached the point where staying hurt more than leaving. That conversation changed how I saw Desiree. For the first time, she stopped speaking like a mother defending a daughter and started sounding like a woman reckoning with the person she had helped create. She told me Marielle was threatening to sue me over the apartment and the furniture. I laughed, not because it was impossible, but because by then I had records for everything. I explained that the real legal exposure in our story was not the move out. It was the repeated, unauthorized charges that went beyond what I had ever agreed to, and the way she kept using access as if permission were permanent. Desiree went quiet, and then apologized in a way that felt real. She said she had enabled too much. I told her we both had, just in different ways. 2 weeks after that, Marielle resurfaced publicly. She tagged me in a long social media post from a new account, using my full name and old photos of us together. In it, she claimed I had abused her, stolen from her, and left her homeless because she had friends. I reported the post, of course, but before it disappeared, I made copies. What interested me most was not what she wrote. It was the reaction. Some people offered sympathy because public accusations scare people into caution, but plenty of others pushed back. A few clearly knew more than she expected them to. They mentioned the married man. They mentioned how often she had bragged about me always taking her back. They mentioned all the trips. Her post lasted only a few hours before she deleted it, but the damage she wanted to do had not landed cleanly. That mattered. Around the same time, I noticed something on my credit report that made my stomach turn. There had been inquiries I did not recognize. After some calls, I learned someone had tried to open new accounts using my information. It did not take long to figure out who had access to enough personal details to attempt that. Marielle had lived with me for 3 years. She knew my date of birth, old addresses, employment information, everything required to be dangerous. That was the moment the whole situation crossed from personal betrayal into something criminal. I filed a police report and gave them the documentation I had been saving for months. Messages, account statements, proof of residence changes, proof of the charges, proof of the identity inquiries. For once, the evidence spoke louder than emotion. She was arrested at her mother's house. I did not celebrate. I also did not feel sorry for her. I felt tired in a deep, settling way, like a storm had finally spent itself. Desiree called me crying after it happened and apologized again and again. I told her I was sorry she was living through that, and I meant it. But my sympathy stopped there. The case moved forward slowly, the way real cases do, with paperwork, delays, and discussion of restitution instead of dramatic courtroom scenes. Her public defender later reached out about the possibility of a plea arrangement that would include probation and repayment. I was open to it, not because I had gone soft, but because I did not need vengeance. I needed closure. The best part of my life now is how ordinary it feels. My condo is furnished the way I want it, not the way someone wanted it on my card. My bills are current. My debt is gone. My home is quiet. I sleep without checking my phone at 2 in the morning to see whether someone needs money, reassurance, or another chance. I started seeing a woman from my gym a while later, very casually at first. Her name is Farah. She has her own place, her own schedule, her own money, and more importantly, a completely different understanding of what partnership is supposed to mean. We split dates because we both want to, not because either of us is keeping score. There is something healing about being with someone who does not treat reliability as weakness. Sometimes people hear pieces of what happened with Marielle and assume the cheating was the deepest cut. It was not. The cheating was terrible, yes, but the part that stayed with me longer was the certainty in her voice when she said I would always forgive her. That was the true betrayal. Not just that she lied or used me or strayed. It was that she believed my love had made me available for permanent disrespect. She thought my steadiness meant I would absorb anything. She thought patience was the same as a lack of boundaries. She was wrong. I do not hate her now. Hate would keep her too close. What I feel instead is distance and a hard-earned kind of clarity. I know exactly where I failed myself. I ignored patterns because I wanted the story I had invested in to still be true. I accepted crumbs and called it maturity. I mistook endurance for virtue. Leaving taught me that a calm exit can say more than any argument. It taught me that consequences do not have to be loud to be final. And it taught me that when someone keeps testing whether you will stay no matter what, the most honest answer you can give is one day not being there when they come back. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.